All right, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Julian Sicano. I'm sitting here with Brad and Fred. They're from the band Silence and Light. They've come all the way down from Virginia Beach. So guys, thanks for coming down. We're here for another episode of the Cognitive Marine, and again here at Fort Lee. But I just want to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves and just talk about, very briefly about your background, and then we can dive into wherever this thing goes.
For sure.
But Brian, I'll start with you, man.
Okay. Hey, well, thank you for having us. And, you know, our whole goal in doing what we're doing now, which we'll get into a little bit later, is really to kind of be an inspiration for the younger troops and younger folks in the military. You know, having gone through a long time in the service and, you know, spent 20 years of my military career in special operations, after the fact and getting out, you know, you start to realize that sense of purpose you felt and the camaraderie that you shared and everything else, it's not the same way once you get out of the service. So, you know, we stood up this band to be something that shows people, you know, we're trying to do something healthy, creative, positive with a lot of the negative things that we've lived over our careers or for however long we've served, and that's kind of where it started. So I'll let Fred jump into.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm Fred Cowell, singer, vocalist for Silence and Light. Also Air Force guy, right? 23 years, still active today.
Oh, right on.
For the foreseeable future, anyways, for the next couple of years.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, same deal. I'm in it for the cause, right?
Yeah, man.
Brad approached me a few years back. Said, "Hey, we're doing this thing. Here's the reason why." And I was moving to Texas at the time, actually, too.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how'd you guys meet?
That social media. I think it was my brother that sent Brad a video. They were on the prowl for a vocalist, and my brother was trying out for them. Ultimately, didn't work out.
Yeah.
I think on his exit, you know, he's like, "Hey, check this guy out," and slid some videos. You know, and,
there you go.
And I think they caught on. They're like, "Yeah, who's this guy? Where's he been?"
Right on.
And yeah, the rest was history, right? So.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, moved out to Texas, linked up with these guys. We kind of made things difficult, right, with the distance. But we found our center in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where we get together and make things happen. So
that's badass, man. I was looking at some of your Instagram posts, or you know, you got good action on there, and also your music. It sounds awesome, man. I mean, there was one of the songs, I forget the name. I was just listening to the other day, and. Is there some inspirations that you guys have in some of your music that you guys are drawn from?
Definitely so, and that kind of adjusts depending on what the theme of the song is.
Yeah.
So I write all the music, Fred does all the lyrics, and that's kind of, you know, the bread and butter of where everything comes from. We get together, we can electronic file share and just send phone recordings back and forth, that kind of thing. So distance, you know, a lot of people think a band all lives together in the same house.
Yeah, yeah.
They ride around together in the same car, and very rarely is that the case. And anyway, so we'll file share, and then we'll collaborate when we get together. Mm-hmm. Definitely has been a source of inspiration, and that's one of the things, you know, as an example, there's a song called Look After Me that's on our first album. And that was a song, when I wrote it, Fred and I had a conversation, which was, you know, what's this song about? What do you want me to write lyrics about? And I said, this really is a song that's like my goodbye to all my teammates that I never had a chance to say goodbye to.
Yeah.
And when something happens overseas and a guy is killed or significantly injured, a lot of times you're still deployed when the memorial service is happening.
That's right, yeah.
You don't get to go to the funeral. You don't get closure that way.
Yeah. And
it's not until, you know, maybe 6 months later or a year later you get to go to Arlington and see their grave or something along those lines. So it was really meant to be, this is our goodbye to all the friends we've lost along the way that we never had a chance to say goodbye to. We also know that it connects with anybody that's experienced loss.
Yeah.
And loss is something that it's all perspective and relative. And I say this all the time, but somebody's worst day might be that they lost their pet. somebody else's worst day could be significantly different than that.
Oh, hell yeah.
And neither one of them is wrong. And there's no right answer to grieving, and there's no right answer to how you deal with loss. But that's one of the things that we wanted to be able to do with this, was to say, we've lived the times, we've lived the dark days, we've all been there, and we're doing something that's healthy, creative, and positive.
Right.
Giving back to the community, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. I mean, that's a major theme. If you stay in this business long enough, you are going to experience that kind of loss, whether it's a teammate or friends. And
I know far more people that have been killed in training that died in combat. Nobody understands that. They think, you go to war, you deploy, you do all this stuff. The number of guys that I know that have died on parachute jumps, helicopter crashes, accidents, you name it. Not even close. And I know a lot of dudes have been killed in combat, but and not even the same. So
it is pretty insane. I mean, that's something that I've been in the Marine Corps 20 years, and I just happened to be in the Marine Corps in the middle of these two major wars, and to your point, it's the training. Most of the training accidents that occur are the ones that are hardest to take, because you can almost, I won't say better understand. I mean, each combat death is tragic, but it's the training deaths that are the hardest to come to grips with, because I think there's more anger that comes out of that, and anger in the sense that, why this was a senseless death in some ways, and some of them are pretty catastrophic, but. I don't know if you heard about this. There was a C-130 that crashed over Mississippi, had some MARSOC operators in the back. Well, the pilot was a good friend of mine. And he and I, we sat next to each other. We were stationed in Bahrain for nearly a year. Before he went back to flying, he basically flew a desk for a year in Bahrain. And when I heard he was on that plane, one, I texted him. And I knew something was terribly wrong when within 24 hours didn't get anything back. But two, the next thing I thought about was his son would call our desk through like the duty lines from CONUS. And I remember picking up the phone to be his son, and I'd be telling his son, hey dude, your dad's on the night shift right now, or he'll be in an hour, or he's in the bathroom, just hold on a second. I would just talk to him about whatever was happening in upstate New York, which is where he was from. But yeah, there's those things, those tragic accidents. Those are the ones I don't think, most of the guys I talk to who've gone through those kind of tragic events, those just never leave you in some way, shape, or form.
They're hard, they're hard hitting, no doubt. And to your point, senseless, it's not, in the greater scheme of you need to train. You need to train as you fight. It's dangerous. It's risky. Those things happen. But, you think nobody wants to die in a training accident.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to die, it's that glorious death in battle, where you jump on the grenade, or you save, the village, or whatever it might be. And then, quickly followed by suicide being, probably the most damaging.
Yeah, that's a damn good point. I mean, we were just talking earlier about how even guys at the mountain peak of, or the peak of the mountain in terms of being in the military, still go through this. And you would think that in many ways, a guy who's screened, trained, and selected, or selected, trained, and screened, could avoid some of these catastrophic outcomes. But the reality is that it happens at all levels. I mean, there was a Navy admiral in Bahrain who took his own life, and he was the 5th Fleet commander. Took his own life in his room, in a 3-star. And it's like, if that's happening to guys like that, then the reality is no one is free from the demons that can creep up on you. And I think we can all relate. We've been there in those moments where you're on the cusp of a divorce, or the divorce is going sideways, and you feel like you've been abandoned by your team, or you have had a buddy who's taken his own life, and now you're just like unraveling. You still have this shell that things are good, but shit's starting to fall apart inside. I don't know if you guys have any experience with that in your own careers.
I feel, very fortunate in that I never was in a situation, regardless of all the stuff that I lived through, dealt with, etc., drama. I never felt like I'm going to take my own life. I never reached that point. But surprisingly, I also never really felt fulfilled. And I get asked this a lot by younger kids, either people looking to join or people that are young kids in the military, and they reach out through social media and they make comments such as, "You must have been so proud when you got the Delta. You must have been, feeling like you were on top of the world after you, did that job and you were assigned there, etc." And I try and equate it to NFL because I think that's the only thing that really correlates.
Yeah.
When you understand, you don't just go to Delta Force. It takes a series, years and years of sacrificing, selecting, etc., to get there. And you get there after all of that, and it's just not what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And that was, in my case, that's kind of the way I felt.
Really?
And so to your point of, just because you're assigned to a certain unit or what people view as the tip of the spear or something else doesn't mean that everything is pixies and rainbows and unicorns and great.
Yeah.
And the Rangers, when I got to the Rangers, so I joined in November of '90. I went through basic training, AIT, airborne school, the Ranger Indoctrination Program. That started in November of '90. I got assigned to B Company, 3rd Ranger Battalion in April of '91. So I was there for just a few years and then deployed to Mogadishu.
Yeah.
And went to Ranger School prior to going to Mogadishu and was a part of the whole Black Hawk Down thing and everything else. And I was already planning to move on from there. I had kind of hit the point of, I've done it. There's not a whole lot else to do.
Yeah.
And I have my sight set on a new challenge.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
I got to ask you about that real quick.
Yep.
So how old were you during the Battle of Mogadishu situation?
24.
And do you think going through that incident at that age, at that point in your career, had the kind of unforeseen positive and negative consequences in your life? Like, as an example, I was in Ramadi in 2006 at the very beginning of my career.
Sure.
And as a young officer, and experiencing that as a young first lieutenant had profound impacts in the rest of my life. And if I was, and I remember looking at the older guys, the old hands there that were in that Battle of Ramadi, and they were, like, we were approaching it differently. And maybe it's youthful ignorance.
Sure.
And maybe they were like, I'm not trying to fucking die out here type
right.
situation. But for me, I was like looking at their cues in many ways, like most young guys do. But at the same sense, I knew that, man, this is just the beginning. Like, I'm the fucking new guy here, and I'm already in the shitstorm of Ramadi in 2006. And so that, to me, I felt in many ways that I was a little more resilient to future challenges, which many have taken place since then. And I can always go back and say, I was good.
Sure.
I'm going to be okay. And I don't know if you had that same experience, obviously an apples and oranges kind of comparison, but
for sure. So I think the main difference in what I experienced in Mogadishu was that it was just a different military. And it was a peacetime army, peacetime, Marine Corps, whatever. And most people coming in weren't trying to become career soldiers or career Marines. It was 4 years, they would get college money, most, get a 4-year enlistment and they got out. Maybe if they were having a positive experience, they stayed in longer. But so most of the guys, most of my peers that I went through Mogadishu with, they got out soon thereafter. And so I was there for, the better part of 2.5 years and experienced it. And, a year later, most of those guys are now getting out.
Yeah.
For me, going back and deploying again was almost therapeutic.
Right.
Because I recognized that not every battle is the same, not every experience is the same, and if we are smarter about what we're doing and put a little more thought into how we're conducting this operation, we can be more successful. And so I can now have a role in that and help drive the train.
Sure.
And I experienced that to some degree, yeah.
Wow. Now, did you know back then, and maybe in your early career, did you have did you know you were going to get into music? At least, I guess the answers or questions for both of you guys. But.
Yeah. I played music starting as like my earliest memories.
Yeah. And
either singing my own songs or making up my own songs, but quickly got into piano, which quickly turned into clarinet, which turned into saxophone for maybe 5 years, and played in school band and church orchestra and all that kind of stuff. And maybe about the time that AC/DC Back in Black came out, I recognized that you can't play that on the clarinet or saxophone, and I needed to get a guitar. So maybe at about 12 is when I picked up a guitar and kind of taught myself how to play, because I'd already trained my ear musically with all these other kind of more formal lessons and everything else. So it started there, and then played in thrash metal bands in the 80s and up until the point of joining the military. So I'll let Fred.
Yeah, so same deal. I mean, so first off, I grew up the son of a Marine. My dad's a retired Marine.
Right on.
He retired out of Quantico, Virginia.
Nice.
But that said, I mean, my whole life, we've always had like the USO tours and stuff. My dad was always pretty good about bringing us out, and we got a lot closer to the action, So when I was at a young age, he started, I'm not going to say push me, but, he always had these philosophies, these 3 things that I need from you in life, 1 is to be a productive member of society, 2 is to carry on the family name, and 3 is to keep rock and roll alive. Yeah. So those are 3 things that I always remember, and again, started at a very young age. But I was 6, 7, 8 years old. I remember, it was like, I don't want to date myself here too much, but there was this old school band. I got to meet the drummer. He gave me a cymbal. And it kind of inspired me at the moment, And then on my 10th birthday, my dad bought me my first, Pearl drum set.
Oh, no kidding.
And then it was 1991. Paradise City had just come out. That was the first song I ever learned how to play on the drums.
Oh, wow.
And I carried that on, And every opportunity I ever got, it was jamming. Every base that we moved to, I was in a band, garage bands and whatnot. And then eventually I put it all down and joined the military. Yeah. But, I got right back into it. You get in the service. You meet like-minded people.
Yeah.
I'm a young guy again out at the bars, jamming.
Heck yeah, man.
With my buddies. And I did that for a while. And I almost separated out of the Air Force at my 10-year mark. Well, first at my 4-year mark, I was going to separate and go play music. Things didn't pan out. And then I reconsidered again at my 10-year mark, but it wasn't nothing kind of
took off.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on, it's a big jump. And I was starting a family and stuff at the time too, so had to look out for mom and the kiddos first.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's how you guys eventually you guys obviously linked up, but you got some other members of your band, right?
Yeah.
That are not here today.
Yeah. So we've got the Marine Corps is near and dear to us for a couple of reasons, but 2 of our members are former Marines. Brandon Lundeen, our drummer, was a crew chief on Marine One,
kidding.
The President's helicopter, and did that for the better part of 4 years. And our bass player, Tyson Stahl, was a Marine. He played on had to have been the Navy. Yeah, the Navy football team during their championship year.
Okay.
And, and he's a football player. Almost like could have gone pro had it not been for the Marine Corps kind of pulling him. And so he had a choice at one point to, do I go Navy? Do I go Marine Corps? And the Battle of Fallujah had happened, and he was like, I want to get into it as fast as I possibly can, because he had a brother that was serving there.
Oh, wow.
And made the choice to commission through the Marines. So he spent a few years as a leader in the Marine Corps, and then Marine Infantry, and then ended up in MARSOC.
Okay, right on.
He was there for, I guess, about 6, I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah.
6, 7 years, something along those lines.
Was he a West Coast or East Coast guy? Do you
East
know?
Coast.
East Coast, oh, yeah, right on.
Yeah, so
that's cool.
That's one of the things, the band started, and like I kind of got into it a little bit before, it initially started because I was looking at ways of trying to be able to give back to the community. And I didn't want to stand up a nonprofit. I didn't want to start a foundation and ask people for money.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I thought of was, how can I do this that's near and dear to me, where I don't have to ask people for something, but that does something and gives back to the community. So I thought of the idea of, put a band together, whatever that looks like, and we'll take music royalties that we earn from streaming and sales and things like that, and we'll give those to veteran and first responder charitable organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're doing. The two that we've selected, one is the Marine Raider Foundation.
Oh, nice.
So, and initially, each band member was going to have their own charitable organization that they could speak to, and kind of talking points as we did press or we did interviews or whatever. And I ended up doing the lion's share of that. So we ended up just talking about the one that I selected, which is another one called Warrior's Heart. Yeah. And Warrior's Heart is an organization. It's an actual physical place in Texas. It helps get guys and gals that are suffering from post-traumatic stress, helps them get clean, first of all, and then helps treat their PTSD and counseling and everything else. But one of the things that it does that I think is amazing, and kind of why we're so bought in with those guys, is that they use art as a form of therapy.
Wow.
And whether it be painting, sculpting, welding, music, poetry, you name it, that's one of the ways. And that's, that spoke to me because the guitar is one of the only things I can do when I pick up.
Yeah.
I'm just in the flow zone. There's I'm not thinking about anything. I don't have negative thoughts. And so I would inspire and challenge people to try and find that thing. Yeah. What is it that does it for you? So if you're stuck on post or you're stuck on base and you can't leave and you're trapped in the barracks, like we've all been there. I've been let down by what the recruiter told me. I've been in situations where I've, wished I wasn't in many times. And music is one of those things that always got me through. So whether you're writing your own music or playing music or listening to music, that's find what works for you, Right
on. So about those charitable organizations, those are, I've heard, obviously the MARSOC, the Raider Foundation, I got to work with some of their activities on the West Coast a couple times. Really a phenomenal group of guys that are out there, and gals.
We wanted to do the giant check, presenting the giant check, and we couldn't figure out, because none of us have printers for giant checks, so we couldn't do it. We wanted to turn it into something kind of that we could use for marketing too.
That's cool.
Show what we do. But we're taking 100% of our royalties and from streams and from music sales. So if you buy a song for 99 cents, we end up with about 63 cents. But we're taking 100% of that and giving it to those two charitable organizations. And
so what's a good place for anyone who listens to this to check out what you guys put out?
It's all of them. iTunes, Amazon. All major platforms.
Spotify, Apple Music. Anywhere.
On every platform.
On the same.
Okay.
YouTube.
Right on. And what's your guys' Instagram handle?
Silence and Light Official. Is the main Instagram page. I run that, but I try and load that with band content, and things that are kind of more general. And then my personal page is, if you just put in Brad Thomas, you'll find me.
Okay.
But that's kind of our main way of reaching out.
Yeah, right on. And a lot of our listeners are young Marines who just joined our team here, and still learning about what it's like to be in the military. much less being in the Marine Corps. And we ask our guys a lot from them. Obviously now with COVID going on, many of the rules that pertain to what you can do on the weekends and frankly even in the evenings have been curtailed to kind of help stop the spread.
Sure.
But there are some third and fourth order effects to all that, and some of which includes, Marines are stuck on base on a weekend, and at least in the training pipeline, maybe not in the fleet, but here at Fort Lee, our Marines are kind of sequestered on base. And there's a lot that I've asked them to work on while they're in this idle time, and when they're waiting for class to start on Monday or whatever it is. And, everything from physical fitness to, for many of our Marines, this is the first time they've ever had a steady paycheck and a bank account. So a lot of real basic things our leadership, between me and the young private, they're working on. And I give all the credit to our instructors, our staff NCOs who are hammering away, making sure these Marines are as successful as they can be for when they hit the fleet. But on the flip side of the coin, it's rare to have folks that are totally not Marines, which is great, and coming from a totally different background. And if you had a chance to talk to these young guys, which you guys will over the next day or so, what would you tell these young guys about and gals how to better prepare themselves for the realism of being in the military in today's modern day Marine Corps? What things should a young Marine work on in order to be more prepared for the realities of life in the military?
You got something on that?
Do you?
I mean, I think first and foremost is to look to your left and right and realize that that's your brother and sister, right?
Right.
Especially over the last year and a half or so.
Yeah.
With this mess and lockdowns and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of us are torn away from home. A lot of us away from home for the first time, right? And this is your family, and it's important to recognize that a lot of folks, I mean, this is all you have to lean on. So we talked about mental health earlier a lot.
Yeah.
That was huge, especially in recent times too.
That's right, yeah.
And it's not just, for warriors or people experience, battle or what have you. It's people who are separated from their loved ones, who don't have an outlet, and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's what I see. If you see somebody that's kind of lost or
yeah.
is straying, to embrace them as your brother and sister. That's first and foremost.
That's a damn good point. And one of the things that I tell the young Marines here is that don't try to find your buddy from Texas or a guy who's from your same hometown, because whatever growth you would have had by having a roommate from Detroit or some dude from California would have ended, because you're just like fitting back into your small, same little hometown that you came from, which is nothing wrong with that. But you're here for the military experience. And yes, to make a friend in another state, town, or some different walk of life. And I don't think there's anything better. I mean, look at you guys. I mean, totally different walks of life, but you have a commonality in the military. And that's a bond that no one can take from you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think diversification is a huge piece. To me, people tend to identify as this one thing, and right now their situation might be that they're just in the Marine Corps, or they're, serving in this role, or whatever it might be. And I always try and remind people that you're still a son or a daughter. In some cases you're a husband or a father. For me, I never let the military take the musician out of me.
Right.
I never let it take my humor away.
Mm-hmm.
I never let it take, there were certain things that I protected and always made sure that, part of my spirit is still me.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of folks after the fact struggle with transitioning out, whether that be after 20 years in the military or 30 years in the military or 5 years in the military. And the key piece that I see that causes conflict is that people have lost their identity. That thing that they sacrificed to be, the thing that they fought so hard to become, the group, the tribe, whatever you want to call it, and now they're out of it. And when you only identify as that one thing, then it's almost like your whole world is gone.
That's right.
So you have to remember that you're more than whatever role you're serving in currently. You know, you're more than that.
That's a damn good point. We've had a series of retirements recently. Some of our, E9s have retired after 28, 29, 30 years. And one of the things that I was really shocked at, and it's not that we didn't try to do something more grand for them on their way out, but literally in a matter of a few hours, their entire Marine Corps career was ended in that retirement ceremony.
Sandwich and a roadmap.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's like, that was 30 years.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. And I mean, me personally, I think we're going to have a flyover, a pass a review, like get all the tanks out of the fucking mothballs. Yeah. Like we're going to do this big. But the reality is that, I think you're hitting it on the head, man. It's to not lose your identity is probably one of the most important things a young Marine can realize that they have, because we've taken you out of your environment.
Sure.
A lot of these Marines have their entire life could fit in a sea bag, and the other piece is that there's that identity of who you are that we can't really take from you, and actually we kind of like to see that grow. And if anything else, I mean, many of the people we know in the military, the reason why we like them and we communicate with them and we hang out with them is because of who they are. Sure. By the way, we hang out on the weekends too. We see each other at work. And to see that grow over time, and you guys have been in long enough to see people again 10 years later, you almost don't even miss a beat when you come in contact with them after 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah. I also found interesting running into guys that I necessarily didn't care for.
Yeah.
Or, we didn't care for one another. 5 years later, and, being out of the service, and there's no competing for that, one job, and we're all vying for, and, not that there was backstabbing or anything else. But, once that has kind of settled, all of a sudden I can enjoy this person differently than I could when we were serving together. So, whether it be, I could tell anybody listening, the person that you're sick of in your platoon or your company and can't stand and everything else, separate yourself 20 years and you'll talk about that one time at Fort Lee when you were together in the barracks and you were locked in and, et cetera, and you'll think, man, those were the good times,
Yeah, that's true.
The hard, something happened to me recently, a family situation happened recently, and I won't share, but it made me realize that we learn the most from the bad stuff.
Right.
It's not the glory of accomplishment or something else that we really learn from. It's the hard times. It's the tough times. And, you hear people say life is a series of peaks and valleys and things along those lines, and it's very true. We hit little plateaus where things are kind of, not much is happening. We're not really learning anything. We're not really losing anything, but we're kind of plateaued. And you really learn the most in life and the lessons that are important in the dark times, when things aren't as good. You learn about who is really there for you. You learn about, all of that kind of stuff. And,
that's right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from, but.
Well, no, I mean, that's a fair point. And, just to kind of date this episode, but, we all just heard about what happened down in Surfside in Florida. And I was stationed in Miami before I came here and took command of the Marine Detachment. And my wife and I, we were only there for a year. As soon as we got there, I found out I was getting command, so I know we're moving next summer. And we lived in a nice little community, but it wasn't on the beach, and it wasn't like the Florida quote unquote lifestyle. So we drove around and we found this little town called Surfside that we were going to move into and spend the last 3-4 months in. It ended up being about 2.5 months, and we actually ended up staying in this little area. And it was just a few blocks away from where this building fell. And so what was interesting is that where that building collapsed was the turnaround point for my run route. And because it was an older building, the plot of land was much larger, and it was like a key terrain feature that I could turn around at. And I'm thinking, like, to your point, man, it was like tragedy could happen in an instant. And one of the things I did was reached out to a friend of mine who lives down in Miami and was like, hey, man, just making sure you guys didn't move from where you were at. And, like, whether you're in the military or a civilian, and the reality is most of our Marines, after their first enlistment within 5 years, they're civilians. And so we owe something to the greater populace to return a Marine back better than what he or she was when they first joined. And that's an idealistic goal. Doesn't always work out perfectly. At the end of the day, I think they're going to be armed with some basic human skills to go out into the world and kind of meet challenges head on, and know that they have a little bit of depth that they can call upon. But the reality is that not every problem requires you to just take it on your own. Sure. And so I think if there's a thread through all of this, is that I hope Marines or any service member, if you're going through a tough time, you got to freaking reach out, man.
For sure.
Because you'd be surprised. When I went through my own divorce a few years ago.
Welcome to the club.
It was freaking horrific, man. And in some weird way, like, I thought I lost friends, but they were like, dude, we were friends anyways. Sure. Like, just because this ex was involved doesn't matter. Like, we still see each other, right?
Yeah.
And it was refreshing in that sense, because the cost of business in the military, as you guys well know, and I don't think we talk about enough, is that you're going to give up a lot, and things are going to happen.
Yeah, definitely so. I think also, too, the thing that we need and the relationship type that we need when we're a 20-year-old in the service is far different than what we need when we're 40.
That's right, yeah.
And relationships change, and if you can keep things on the same path and with the same goals and everything else, and hopefully it works out for the best. But it definitely takes a toll.
That's right. How old were you guys when you joined the military?
So I was 21.
Yeah. 18. So basically your entire youth.
Sure. And one of the things that I thought of recently, they talk about brain development, right? And your brain doesn't fully develop in males. Right. It's like 27 years of age. And when you think about, you spend these formative years where your brain is still developing.
That's right.
And, I've heard the once a Marine, always Marine, once a soldier, you can't take the soldier out of such and such, but it becomes a part of your psyche,
That's right.
It's not who I am today, but it's definitely a huge part of who I am today, and it's why I am the way that I am, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. You mentioned something, I just wanted to backtrack on it. You mentioned something about folks serving in different roles and things along those lines. And earlier, I referenced it, and then my scatterbrain took me somewhere else, but I talked about elite military being very much like the NFL. And you don't go from Pee Wee football to the NFL. There are steps along the way. And people see elite military as, the NFL player, the star, of whatever team. That's kind of at the level, right? But what they don't see is all of the coaches that it took to get them, all the physical trainers, all of the people, the guy that sods the field. Like, it's this whole team, not any one individual. And, I've always tried to go out of my way to give huge, props to the folks that supported everything we did, from gassing up the helicopters to, so you serve in a mission cycle. We're going to go do this, and here's our target, and we get jackpot on target. The number of things that happen, and you're serving this one tiny little piece, like a fraction of a percent, but that's the most, it's perceived as the coolest part,
That's right.
And so this gets all the attention, but all of this is what made that happen. Mm-hmm. And
I mean, to your point, just look at the intel effort that's put in to support the unit.
Sure.
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to switch gears a little bit too, because I mean that's one of the interesting things about like this group, Silence and Light. That is, I'm like the oddball out here. I got all these ops guys, that are doing all these big time things, and really like they're like the poster, of the military. And then you got me, I'm the motor T guy, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've embraced that. I mean, that's 23 years I've been doing that. So, and that's something I have to talk to my guys about too. Because a lot of times, I mean, that's what they're doing. They're in a shop. It's hot. It's hard work. They're heavy lifting and swapping motors and whatever else to get trucks out.
That's right.
And they start to lose sight of how that impacts the mission. Well, you take Brad over here in Delta and them guys, getting after something. I mean, they need trucks, they need supplies, they need, all that stuff, and without it, it's gone. So.
That's right. I mean, I was at MARSOC. I was the XO of 1st Marine Raider Support Battalion a few years ago, and this unit was in direct support of the a Raider company, and the various deployment, sizes that those Raider elements go out and do deployments on in support of the SOCOM mission. And you have the plethora of support Marines that are doing everything from intel to communication to the riggers to, many of the schools we have here. And a lot of those Marines are kind of the unsung heroes of the requirements. And especially, our intel guys, intel drives operations. So for an intel Marine to hammer away at human or SIGINT or any other source that they were able to obtain the intel on, that's a very technical skill. Sometimes you got to get close to the objective area and do the kind of reconnaissance, whether it's airborne or ground or seaborne. It takes a total package to get jackpot, like you said. And there was a great book from General McChrystal, and we talked about how in Iraq they reformed the way JSOC went after their missions, and they leaped from mission to mission to mission, and using kind of they exploited the intel on the X, and then used that to kind of launch their next raid.
Sure.
And I don't know if you got any insight on that.
Probably nothing that I can share firsthand.
Yeah.
I think, my time early in the service, something that always stood out to me, and this might, I don't know, be on the right path or not on the right path, but I always think of it's the Marine Corps that has the adapt and overcome moniker, correct?
Sure, yeah, that's right.
And I think of that, right, where you think things operationally are going to be going a certain way, and then you hit a roadblock, and you can either, that wasn't the plan, or you can adjust and rapidly change and do what you need to do to accomplish the task. And so whether it's gleaning intelligence that leads you to something else, or whether it's by nature of there was an obstacle or something that we had to modify to go around, I think adjusting on the fly is a huge part of what it takes to be successful.
Sure.
I can tell you Delta looks specifically, what they call cognitive dexterity, which is a fancy word for rapid problem solving. They're looking at a guy that can assess the situation and rapidly make decisions, and hopefully they're the right decisions, but quickly kind of problem solve on his feet. And that's a great quality, whether you're a Delta Force guy or whether you're a Marine serving chow, whatever it is. our lives, our daily business is all about how we respond to the curveball that gets thrown at us.
Yeah, that's right.
And even in life, whatever that might be.
That's right. Yeah, I was reading up on.
Was that a good way for me to dodge that question?
No, it was. It was excellent. It was like a massive Matrix style escapade there. But a little about your background. I saw an Instagram post. It keeps on popping up about the Saddam thing, and the whole. What's the intersection there?
Again, nothing I'm gonna elaborate on. Someone sent me the memes, and I had never seen them before. So I don't think I saw the first one until like maybe 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
And literally, I just thought it was hilarious because it was like, the cost of an apartment, what $1,800 gets you in New York, and it was like shows this tiny little kid in Saddam's laying at the bottom of it, and I thought that is just so on point,
That's hilarious.
And then since I posted that one, then people are now
like
sending me all these different variants.
That's funny.
So
that's funny.
Yeah, I was a part of that operation.
Oh, cool.
And famously was hungover before the world knew that had happened.
Oh, dang.
I love that. My teammate coined that. He goes, "We were hungover before the world even knew."
Yeah, that was. I remember that day clearly when they announced that capture. And it's amazing. You look back at the past 20 plus years and all of our intersections in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I run in just the other day. I was coming through the gate, and retired Army soldier. He and I ate at the same chow hall together in Ramadi every day for damn near 10 months, and we were there. We knew every scenario. I was like, "Were you there when this happened?" I was like, he was like, "Yeah, I remember that." I was like, "There." And before you know it, we're like, traffic's backed up for like quarter mile, and we are like just intersecting real quick about how the wars have taken us all the way to the other side of the planet, and here we are.
Sure.
This happens on occasion on the Cognitive Marine, where Marines reach out or soldiers reach out, or we cross paths at some weird intersection in the world, and I would never. I tell people, ask me frequently, like, "Hey, what do you think about the military after 20 some odd years?" And I love it. I would definitely do it again, but I say that with like a pause for effect, because I still have no idea how I survived everything that I went through. Not all of it was combat related. It's just these, different units. Every 2-3 years, maybe not in the unit, you're there for a while. But in like the Air Force, I'm sure you're moving around every 3 to 4 years. And every single recontact you make with another unit, it's like starting from day one.
Sure.
It's like a brand new job. And you're got to prove yourself. Does the boss, hate me? And there's a constant like battle that you're fighting, and that is a tough way to live in any organization.
Sure.
Much less the military, where the expectations are high, especially in guys who work in maintenance, whether it's ground or air. I mean, it is a tough way to live.
I think it's tough too when the things that you use and are being graded against in the military have sometimes no application outside of the military.
That's right.
So I tell people, when I talk to guys in Delta that are currently serving, that are maybe on the edge of thinking about getting out or retiring or whatever it might be, I'll say no one out in the world really cares that you were on 600 combat operations. The business has to make money. That's what they care about.
That's right.
Not that they don't care about you. They know what they're getting. They're getting a very, professional, elite soldier, but, and so you have to, that's why I say, with the whole identity and your brand, whatever it might be, you're more than just what you're doing in the military. So I tell people this all the time. The number of guys that were amazing commandos, follow them into any battle. They were, the guy that was going to get the job done. Horrible failures in most of the other aspects of their life. And that isn't, I don't think, a well-rounded person. I don't think a well-rounded human. And, you should aspire to be more than just serving in that one role.
That's right.
And it'll help you when it comes time to getting out of the military, separating from the service, whatever it might be, because you'll realize that you have more value than just what you're doing in the military.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that speaks right back to the point from early on, right? Diversify, work on those other skills.
Right.
You never know when you bring that to the table, right? Now, something else I'll add, though, you're talking about the cognitive Marine and whether you'd go back and do it again and all that other stuff. I would say that if you're thinking about that, or if you're not sure whether or not you would, do this again, I would say you should have joined the Air Force, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Every bit of my 23 years up to this point, I've absolutely
loved. That quality of life.
And I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force.
Yeah, and I don't know how much longer I'll go, but yeah.
Dude, it was like growing up as a dependent in the Air Force.
So I smartly got out of an Air Force contract and joined the Army. Yeah.
Well, I just had to say that. Yeah. I was almost a Marine. I was days away.
Yeah. Almost a Marine. That's a famous first words.
I still know. I still wear my USMC PT shirt though from time to time.
Man.
Like, you're a Marine? Like, no.
Yeah.
We're having this big argument currently about, not big argument seriously, but this battle going back and forth internally in the band about the album title for number 2.
Yeah.
And I want to call it Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda.
Right.
And Fred doesn't like that, so every chance I have to say, to throw that out.
All right, well, I'll give you guys the last word, man. Any thoughts, any other things you want to bring up?
Let's see. Fred says every day is arm day.
That's right.
No, I appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, man.
And helping us spread the word, and what you're doing is a great service too, by giving people like us a platform and a place to get our message out.
Definitely.
So we appreciate you having us.
Yeah.
And if we can reach one person, or something that any of us said today can help one person, then it's all worth it.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. And before we jumped on here to record, we talked about, and you made reference to it earlier, about hopefully the Marine Corps is giving back, a guy into the community when he separates from the service.
Sure.
Hopefully, better than, et cetera, but recognize also that it's not the service's job, to reintegrate you and make sure that you feel good when you leave and all those things. So I tell people, you're not a victim. Like, you signed up for this. Yeah. I'm not a victim, even though I lived through many gunfights and many dangerous situations and saw buddies killed and lost a lot of friends along the way, whether it was training or something else. I volunteered for that, and that's something that I wanted to be a part of and do, and I'm not a victim because of that. So I refuse to, look at myself that way. We're here to take care of each other, and the veteran community, first responder community, it could be ER docs. Like, they've all experienced the same kind of trauma and stress and everything else, and sacrifice and loss of identity. One of the things, and this is a little bit long-winded, but I did a podcast with a comedian, Jay Moore, and he was on Saturday Night Live and in some movies and stuff like that, and he has a great podcast. And I hit him up directly after hearing a gal named Justine Bateman, who was, now I'm dating myself, but in the mid-'80s, the show Family Ties was on TV, and it was a part of Thursday night's NBC must-see TV, and Cheers followed it, or whatever, and packed full of whatever. And that's Jason Bateman's sister. So most people know him from Underdog and other stuff that he's Dodgeball. Not Underdog.
Yeah, there it is.
Anyway, it was fascinating hearing her story of how she was on TV every Thursday night in millions of households. That's back when we only had like 4 channels, so everybody watched the same shows. And when it went into syndication, it was on every day. She was this huge household name. And her whole point of being on the podcast was that she had written this book called Falling from Fame. And I thought, it's the same dynamic. It's the exact same dynamic that most people separating from the service falling, it's that thing. It's that loss of identity, that I used to do this. I used to fulfill this special role and had this purpose and everything else, and it was all taken away when the show got canceled.
That's right.
And anyway, that's why you gotta be more than just what you're doing.
That's right, man. Yeah.
Look for the new challenge.
Yeah, and ditto, right? Ditto. You had me. Hello. No,
yeah.
But yeah, thank you for having us, for sure. I would add that and I hate to keep circling back to it, but lose the in groups. Take care of each other. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because you never know when you're going to be in need.
That's right.
What experience you can gain from somebody that's not like you. So. Yeah, take that and have a good time.
Absolutely. And again, thanks guys for doing this. For the listeners out there, these gentlemen came all the way from their homes, drove all the way out here to Fort Lee, and to kind of bring something different, play some music, hang out with some Marines down here at Fort Lee. So I greatly appreciate that. I think the Marines are going to appreciate that, and the families as well. You guys will meet them all, meet our team tonight. But anyways, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.